Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much, and I appreciate so much the Senator from Hawaii's perspective on this really important issue, and it is a really important issue. I mean, there's been some discussion on the other side about how for 50 years there's been a consensus in this chamber about how we treat these issues, ignoring completely what the Dobbs decision has done to this country, which is to strip a 50-year constitutional right, to strip a 50-year constitutional freedom from the American people. It is the first time since Reconstruction that a right has been stripped from the American people by the Supreme Court, and it has been a 50-year crusade, an agenda by the allies of the people across this aisle to accomplish that. There was a lot earlier, Mr. President, I heard about, well, I didn't learn that in law school. I didn't learn that in law school today about the First Amendment and their debate about TikTok. Well, when I was in law school, that is when originalism was injected into the bloodstream of conservative legal thought in this country. It had not existed before. It was something that was invented by Justice Scalia when he was a law professor and grabbed onto by a lot of people on the other side of the aisle to justify a deeply conservative view of economic history in America. I'd ask my colleagues to allow me to give the rest of my speech before they use profanity on the floor of the Senate to describe what I'm talking about.
The Senate will be in order. Members are asked to take their conversations off the floor.
I'm not offended by that. I just think some of the people at home may not want to hear that kind of language on the floor of the Senate. But that's because they know what I'm saying is true about originalism. And because of their efforts, and because they were able to elect Donald Trump, who was not actually read in on the joke, we ended up with 3 people on the Supreme Court who subscribe to that originalist view, and who decided, following Justice Alito, that if it was not a freedom in 1868, that it's not a freedom in 2023. Even though it has been a freedom and a right for the last 50 years in this country. So don't come here and say that there was somehow a consensus here when that freedom and that right has been stripped from the American people by the Supreme Court. And then my colleague from Alabama who's left the floor, by the way, Mr. President, just on that point, he has now twice misrepresented my actions on this floor. And so I would ask for the record to include this article from Politico, which my colleague from Alabama put in the record the last time he was here misrepresenting my record. I'd like to put exactly the same article in the record so people can actually see the truth of my record, Mr.
Without
President.
objection.
And I want to thank, he's gone, the Senator from Alabama, for finding an article in Politico about me, because it is so seldom that any article is written about me. I'm grateful that he's called attention to it. He's not here for me to say thank you for that. But he's now on the floor doing something that no senator has ever done, holding up every single flag officer's promotion in this country, 180 of them or so now, maybe 600 of them, the head of the 7th Fleet, the head of the 5th Fleet. These are vital offices that he is holding up. He just said, we've got enough generals. We have enough generals. Why is he doing it? Why is he doing it? He's doing it because he is offended by a regulation that the Department of Defense has promulgated in the wake of the Dobbs decision, reversing Roe versus Wade, stripping the American people of this fundamental right, stripping the American people of this fundamental right. And in the wake of that, the Secretary of Defense had the nerve to say, if you are serving through no decision that you've made in a state like Alabama that has banned abortion, and you have to travel to another state to get an abortion, we'll pay for that. Travel. Travel. If you need a little bit of extra time, the regulations say, before you go to your commanding officer and tell them that you have to have a medical procedure like abortion, it gives you a little extra time to do that. The third thing it does, Mr. President, is that it says that if you have to leave the state of Alabama because you can't have access to abortion there, that you don't have to use paid leave. That's the three things this rule does. That's all. I'm coming to an end, Mr. President. That is all it does. That is all it does. In his world, he would like to have a place where people did not have they did not have their travel paid for. They had to use their paid leave, and they had to tell their commanding officer immediately. That's the America he wants to live in because he lives in a state.
Senator's time has expired.
I'd ask the Senate for 30 more seconds.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Thank you. He is entitled to his opinion, certainly. And the state of Alabama has a totally different approach to a woman's right to choose than Colorado does, and I respect that even though we differ. But in Alabama, there are no exceptions for rape or incest. In Alabama, if you're a doctor who's committed an abortion, you can go to jail for 99 years. In Alabama, they are trying to say that women that use chemicals that many women use.
Senator's time has expired.
To end their abortion. And all we're saying is we need to recognize what's happened since Dobbs, and we need.
The senator's time has expired.
I yield the floor. Thank you, Mr. President.